Hello and welcome to Swiftly Spoken, a fan-made Taylor Swift podcast in which we break down her lyrics, deep dive into full album retrospectives, and theorise about what may be coming next. As always, we are your hosts, Lisa and Cameron, and after the hectic last few months of Taylor content and 1989 Taylor's version on the horizon, for this episode we thought we'd take a pause and have more of a laid-back chat in which we classify every single album into seasons, as well as celebrate our second anniversary as a podcast. So we have now been posting episodes for 2 years, which is absolutely crazy to think and to say. So today's episode is, in a way, a bit of a celebration of that, and also a way for us to say thank you for many, many things. But first, going back, so many things have changed in those 2 years. So many albums have come out in those 2 years.
Yeah, it's mad that when we started, where we were in terms of what was about to come out, what has happened since is just like mental. Like the fact that we were kind of in like the Folklore, Evermore eras, and then now we've had like Red, and we've got to kind of see those releases and be part of those releases, as well as part of this podcast.
Yeah.
Which has been so exciting. We've had like Red, Speak Now, Fearless, Midnight, and then obviously about to go into 1989. It's just like poof, 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 the eras tour. It's nuts what's kind of happened since when we first started.
And if you would have said to us back when we were like planning for it, because I think we were planning just around Fearless, Taylor's version, and then we started the podcast in the summer between the first two Taylor's versions. But if you were to say to us, okay, and now there's going to be a whole other album and a whole tour and, you know, all of that, I don't know, looking back, it was just, we were just doing it in a way just to have something to chat about, but it became something much bigger for both of us because we don't just chat about, though looking back now, we also look forward and predict and can get excited with you guys, the listeners. And yeah, I think it really changed into something much bigger for sure. I think so anyway.
Yeah. And it was funny because, we had so many plans, we had so many episodes planned of like, we can do one about this, we can do one about this, and this music video and this and that, and we've just never ever got round to it because every time we get a plan or like, let's do this, Taylor gets releases something, we've got to like drop everything, do an emergency episode. Yep. Even when we plan just like a week in advance, we're like, okay, next week, because we always discuss, we kind of know what we're going to be recording for at least 2-3 weeks in advance of where we are, and sometimes it will be like we know what we're recording next week and we've literally had to stop recording that, like with our last episodes. Stop recording that and discuss something else because Taylor's, dropped something or, announced something. So it has been quite fun. We have definitely kind of have to think on our feet and change up the schedule quite a lot. And there are episodes that we've planned, that we planned back in 2021 that have not yet seen the light of day. Right. Or just even ideas. Yeah. that probably maybe won't ever see the light of day because...
Oh, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I guess to us in a way has kept this podcast exciting because in the lulls we can go back to those ideas and fall back on some of the more fun or creative episodes, kind of like the beginning episodes where we created our Taylor Swift like compilation albums. This episode today where we're going to be speaking about, classifying the albums as seasons, where we can go and deep dive into her already established discography, but then every so often we have to kind of comment on what's coming next because as you said, it's just been non-stop for many, many months. Looking back at it all, we just wanted to basically say thank you at the top of this episode. Thank you to everyone who listens, everyone who is with us on YouTube and leaves comments. We do read every single one. We try and answer all of them as well. Just thank you for being interested in our content and coming along with us. What we wanted to do from the beginning was a couple of things. Firstly, we said, we wanted to be quite credible sources. So if we did go into retrospectives or deep diving and things, we wanted to be quite, responsible with the things that we said and not just say, oh, I like that.
Yeah, we wanted to be like factual and informative.
Exactly, yeah. And then that was, on the hand of the retrospectives. And on the other hand, talking about looking at what's coming next and picking apart releases and reactions and discussions, I think it's just been a really, really nice way to share excitement. Because before we did this, neither of us really had people that we could turn to and kind of have a conversation about Taylor for many, many hours because they would have just been like, you need to stop. you need to shut up now.
I'm bored.
Yeah.
I don't know what on earth you're talking about. Leave me alone, you crazy person.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us on this crazy journey. And another big milestone that we wanted to thank everyone for is thank you for over 100,000 views in total on YouTube. And just before we do go on to the albums as seasons and discussing how we feel about that, what's been your favourite memory of the podcast, Cameron? Has there been any episode that you really enjoyed, or something that over the last 2 years, because a lot has changed. We've had upgrades in setup, we've had challenges and cursed episodes, but is there anything that springs to mind for you?
I think, to be fair, some of my favourite episodes have been I think one that still stands out for me is, there's two that kind of stand out. One is the Evermore retrospective. I don't know why, but I really loved recording that episode. I haven't really ever listened to it back, so I don't know maybe what it was that made me be like, but I just really loved delving into that album. That was fascinating. I also loved, and I know we shout her out a lot, Mediha, when
best guest.
We got to speak to her about, her experience at, the Lover Secret Sessions. That was so interesting, and I just was it was 101 questions that I fired at her in about a minute, because I was like, oh my god, what about this? Because obviously I never
were so excited that day.
That had met Taylor before.
Yeah.
So I loved that. Those are some of my kind of favourite ones. I just generally enjoy all of them, but those are the two that really do stand out for me as the ones that I really loved. I also loved our Sparks Fly episode. I think we went into a lot of detail there. And looking at those original lyrics and things like that. But also just some of the, just the general recapping of when something's been released, or just the general excitement I've always really enjoyed. But yeah, it has been interesting. We're now kind of technically on our third season.
Yes. I guess this is going to be our last episode of season 2. So yeah, we're moving into the third season, I would say.
Third season of Swiftly Spoken, and the fact we've kind of gone through different colour changes. I think this season we're keeping it the same. We perfectly timed that though when we released because I don't remember, we were like, we've got something to announce, and then Taylor decided to announce Midnights, which kind of totally derailed our announcement,
as always.
And then thankfully the colours matched. Imagine if we'd gone with blue and then Taylor had gone into an era of
orange,
I don't know, yellow,
we just come orange. Out of orange. That would have been very
exactly.
funny.
We'd be like, oh my god. What about you? What's kind of been your highlights of episodes and stuff?
I guess I agree with you. Definitely, I love the more discussion-based ones where we can really deep dive into things. Obviously, it takes a lot more planning, but then we also get really interesting and thoughtful comments from you guys, which is something that I didn't really expect. I thought we'd just be, alone out here. But to be able to connect with people on YouTube and see you kind of you guys write essays in the comments, which is so cool because we read them and it's you are as invested as we are. Yeah, some of my favorite ones, obviously a big episode for me, which will always be in my heart, is that how Taylor avoided the 4th album curse episode. We didn't have much of an idea what we were doing, but we as always, we researched, we had things. Obviously, sometimes things go wrong. We're only we always say this, we're just a very fan-made, amateur kind of podcast. It's just you and I in our bedrooms over a call, So, but back then it was even more so. And
so amateur. We were literally recording on our phone.
Exactly. And somehow the YouTube algorithm picked it up. And many of you probably joined us from that episode. And we thank you if you've stuck around since then. But it kind of just blew up. And it was just so crazy waking up, a few days later and being like, what is going on right now?
Yeah. Because I remember that was at the time when if we hit 100 views, that was oh
crazy.
My God.
Wow, which it still is, honestly. But
and, it is when you think if you stand in, if I stood in front of a crowd of 100 people and did a speech, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm terrified.
Yeah,
100
definitely,
people in a room's a lot. And I just remember it kind of started rising a bit, and it was wow, we're on 500, that's bonkers. And then it was 1,000, and then you could literally reload it. And it would go from 1.1k to 1.2.
Yeah,
and it was oh my God. It then became slightly out of control, almost we're still a very, very tiny little podcast,
Yeah,
as you said,
we're
very
only
amateur,
small.
just the pair of us. We do all of it. We do all of our social media, all of our YouTube, all the editing, all the concepts, it's just you and me running the ship, that just felt like so big and like way bigger than we were. It was like, this is just bigger than us. And then the comments did, to be fair, start to get a bit out of hand. I remember it started to be a bit full on, and we just kind of left it. But that was bonkers. Like, I do remember thinking, I think I might be wrong, but I believe it's like our 6th or 7th episode. Like,
it's a very early on one.
So early
very
on.
Early on. Yeah.
So early on. But I think what is also funny is our first ever episode, the Lover music video, where when we recorded it, the pair of us, I remember we had to repeat something about 20. We were both so nervous, as if I was standing in front of loads of people. Whereas now we just chat rubbish and we're like, oh yeah, just edit that out, or like, oh, just leave it as it is, you know.
Just keep it.
Back then, it was like, we'd be like, oh, we'd re-record it and then...
Did I say that well enough?
Yeah, I'll be like, oh, that'll be fine, yeah. Then the Secrets of the Last Great American Dynasty, which for some reason is doing really well. I'm like, guys, please stop watching that. It's so embarrassing. I don't even want to listen back to it. We were so nervous and like, we were so early on into it. But no, it is so much fun. And yeah. Both of us, like, it is, like you said, one thing that I didn't really expect was like all of the people that would, because you put something out in the world, especially with like a podcast, and it's quite hard to really track. Like, you can see the especially on like Spotify or Apple, like you can see, you know, you've got 500 listens or however many listens, and you're like, oh wow, that's a lot of people, you know, but you don't ever really know
who they are,
people's opinions were
like
of it,
how they feel about it.
Exactly. And I think what's quite nice with like YouTube, for example, and one of the things I didn't really expect is that, you know, you can visually see how many people are not only viewing it, but then people that are then commenting and interacting, and people that come back multiple times and, you know, are like, oh, I'm so excited, I can't wait for it. And you're like, oh my gosh, like the fact that people care is what's really, really lovely, and that they want to listen and you know, and that's what I have really, really enjoyed, and something that I didn't maybe really think about when we first did it. And I don't know if we'll ever have an episode blow up like that again, but if we do, then at least we're a little bit more prepared this time.
Yeah, hopefully.
It was just
crazy.
That was terrifying, because I remember the thing that both of us agreed with each other was that the only people we were doing it for was for each other.
Exactly.
We were basically just doing it
to have fun,
just to catch up, chat about Taylor, and record it and plonk it out in the world and see what happened.
Exactly.
If it was a success, it was a success. If it wasn't, we'd probably just continue chatting and calling anyway, probably, and just stop recording it.
Yeah, we're just very, very thankful that people still are around, and even if our episodes got 100 views, 1,000, whatever they get, the point is that there are some people out there who feel the same way that we do about Taylor, and now have a way to express that somehow, and just have a fun time talking about her albums and her music, and why we all, you know, bond over these type of things. So yeah, thank you guys for listening and for being involved, and thank you, Cameron, for wanting to get involved in the beginning with all of this craziness.
Yes, and you as well. It is mad that both of us, I don't know where it ever really started, this conversation of just like, should we do a podcast?
Yeah, because we hadn't,
and then we just kind of like jumped in
met or anything. We still haven't.
No,
technically.
This is something that you guys are probably you don't know. Surprised by. But we've actually never met in real life. No. We call each other constantly, message constantly, and literally like to have a podcast together, but have actually never met in real life. And we at that time hadn't even, I don't think we'd even
seen each other
over the phone. I know we spent lots of
messages.
I know we sent lots of like messages and things like that, and voice messages. But yeah, we just were like, I don't know, we just kind of agreed, oh, should we do a podcast? Yeah. And then we called, and it was initially a bit awkward. I remember both of us a bit like, because obviously you don't know who it is.
No, who's this person on the other side? We kind of
clicked instantly.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, let's do it. And I remember trying to come up with names and
images and
logos and images and and trying to launch it all, because I remember the launch was like screwed up a bit, because it only went live on Spotify, because none of it took a couple of hours. We had not really anticipated how it all worked, because we were very amateur to it all, and most people release like a short intro episode that then means that once you release your big one, it goes out the second it gets released or something. So we had a bit of a delay on that, and then we decided, should we do YouTube? I think you suggested it. You're like, should we do YouTube? That's a really good way to reach a wider audience and also see our audience and engage a bit more with the audience. And I think that was the best thing that we've done, is launch the YouTube as well, because it does mean that we just get to interact so much more and do more fun stuff. But yeah, it is bonkers, and yeah, thank you too, and thank you everyone else. Like crazy, and yeah, 2 years. That's not crazy, and hopefully, here's the next 2 years, and however many seasons,
however many we
albums.
can go. Yeah, and how many more albums, re-recordings, tours, whatever may come our way. Definitely. Anyway, moving on from that, let's get into just a fun little episode that we wanted to do. We're going to be classifying each of Taylor's 10 studio albums into the seasons that we think that they most resemble, or the vibe that they give off. Before we start, I just wanted to say we don't know each other's answers, so we're going to be kind of like comparing and then coming to a conclusion of where we would place each of the albums. And yeah, before we start, it is very easy to have your opinion affected by when the album was released or when the re-releases were released, because I found that for me it was a bit difficult to be like, right, split this away in your head from that time of year just because it came out at that time of year, and then try and be like, okay, so the vibes of the music, what the songs speak about, how they kind of like go with a certain period of the year, or when you find yourself listening to that album more because it kind of like goes with the season. I don't know, maybe that's a bit strange to think, but that's how I went off of it. Just the general feeling of the album.
Yeah, it's same here. I think I incorporated like when it was released, the photo shoot, the aesthetic that was trying to be achieved. That
does influence.
And then some of the like narratives within the songs.
Yeah.
Because some of the songs do talk about very specific seasons or times or weathers and stuff like that. And therefore, but they're not trying to be swayed by ones that mention a certain season or a certain weather or certain whatever.
Yeah,
then I think the whole album's that, because sometimes it's sometimes it's not.
Yeah,
there are some that's like this is shared across, but others I'm like, am I just being swayed by one thing? So I tried to factor in every element.
We're going to be going through them chronologically, so from debut right down to Midnights. And something that I have got opened up as well that we can chat about is a Reddit post by user Bluebell08, and they basically have a graph in which they've mapped out seasons mentioned in each Taylor Swift album. So I thought that as we go along, it will be interesting to see if that season that is mentioned predominantly in a certain album, is it the same season as we have put the album in? So we can compare as we go along and kind of chat about that. But anyway, let's start from the top as always. Taylor Swift debut, the first album. How are you feeling about debut? I was very happy with my choice for debut.
Yeah, me too. I feel like a lot of these I have, even though I might have put them in a certain season, I've chosen what end of the season, middle, start, if it is a more transitional period. So for debut, I've put spring/summer.
Okay.
So the change over from spring into summer. Yeah. That's how I felt debut is. Its general kind of feeling is that anyway, of like, it's quite youthful, like spring, in its kind of just general image and storytelling, and also just the stuff that it is detailing is about a kind of like it just sounds very summery in spring, and the photo shoot is her kind of in the water, and it's kind of sunny, but it's not like boiling hot, and the sundress, that kind of whole aesthetic, and our song feels very spring, but then things like Tim McGraw and stuff is reflecting back on the summer, so I tried to kind of include a bit of both. So I feel like it does span across, for me it spans across like a spring summer.
Yeah,
that's how I would see
that.
Debut and its general aesthetics. Like You Only Me When I'm With You is very summery and feels like you're jumping into lakes and things like that. But then you do have things like Cold As You and stuff like that, which feel a bit more spring. But I don't know, how did you feel about debut? It wasn't as clear cut for me.
Okay, so for me, I knew it was going to be summer. That is what I knew. For me, in my heart, debut was very summer. It was a toss up between like the beginning of summer or the end of summer, because you've got Tim McGraw, which could easily be very like end of summery, September saw a month of tears. Back. Yeah, we're looking back at the summer and this summer love. But that is kind of more of a reflective song. But many other songs, like you said, the aesthetic, the music videos as well, they feel very summery. I don't know, Taylor Swift just feels like a beginning of summer album. So early summer I placed it at, which is very similar to what you were saying with end of spring, early summer. I also feel like obviously spring can be related to, you know, youth, naivety of that era of your life. So I get what you mean with that. But yeah, I placed it in early summer as well. So yeah, we're kind of on the same page with that one. And that is funny because debut does predominantly mention summer. It doesn't mention spring, autumn, or winter. So interesting.
So next is Fearless. So with Fearless, this one was actually one of the ones that I struggled with the most.
Okay.
In terms of trying to categorize it. I kind of put like early spring.
Okay.
I don't really know. I think maybe for me it's more... I think I'm being slightly influenced maybe by the Taylor's version.
Definitely. Me too.
With like coming off the back of Evermore.
Yeah.
Like, and we'll get into that later, but coming off the back of Evermore, it's very small photo shoot of 3 photos. Feels a bit more kind of spring vibes. And the album itself doesn't have that big summer feel of like, you know, of a kind of release, and like in terms of like summer normally is that feeling of like freedom and it's all fun and energetic and quite bright, whereas Fearless does have kind of a lot of undertones of like a lot of sadness,
a lot of rain,
reflection, which I don't... Yeah, a lot of rain. Yeah, like you said. Yes. I hadn't even thought about that. A lot of, crying in the rain and coming in with the rain.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think for me, spring is where I associate it. It doesn't feel autumnal. It doesn't feel like you're wrapped up in, for me at least, it doesn't feel like I'm wrapped up inside with a hot chocolate. That isn't the vibe I get from Fearless. But it does feel like there is an element of coldness. I don't know, maybe I'm just chatting rubbish. What do you think?
No, again, like we said, these are just our vibes and how we feel about like the songs, their themes and things. And I think I have also been very influenced by the re-released album and the time that it was released, because now always in my head I associate Fearless with spring, which I think is another interesting point that we can speak about as we go through. The release dates, as we have said, kind of do influence, although in the beginning, every single release date, you know, all of the Big Machine
August.
Albums were always, single in August.
October, sorry.
Yeah, single in August though, right? And then album in October.
August,
it was as simple as that, really. It kind of worked out that way for those 6 albums. And then moving on from there, Taylor kind of changed it up a bit. And I do feel like when she changed it up, those albums kind of came out at the right time of the year for what they were talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
But
especially, especially Fearless, I feel like. I feel like that has it just adopted. I do think of that start of the year of like spring, the voidness of the
early
start of the
spring,
year.
Moving on from winter. I don't feel like it's very wintry at all, but it is kind of like you said, it's not really autumnal, although it does have a lot of rain and it does mention autumn in a few songs, like The Best Day is very autumn vibes in portions of it, for example. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I also placed it in spring. I also think because it is very innocent love, but also coming to an end in some cases, but we'll get to that in some other albums. But yeah, the innocence of it all, very much like debut as well. But I don't know, it's a bit more bright, but a different kind of bright. Like you said, summer is bright and flashy and showy and, you know, run out of your house and you're screaming, you know? Whereas spring is more like the brightness, because of its comparison to what came prior. And I don't know, I just feel it's more like innocent and I see.
And I think even the rain in those ones doesn't, like, you know, in your best dress and stuff like that, it does feel like
it's a light
you wouldn't be out in the rain in a rain. Like, it would be like a spring downpour where it's not cold or anything, it's just wet. You know, you wouldn't want to be out in December in the rain, especially in the UK. Jesus Christ, you'll be cold. You'll have a cold for months.
Definitely.
Like, you would be ridiculous doing that. So yeah, I think for me, Fearless, definitely does fit that vibe. And what was the kind of Reddit?
Yeah, so as for seasons mentioned in Fearless, we don't have any spring. We have summer and autumn. So again, these are seasons mentioned, so not so much like months of the year or anything like that. So in case we aren't including that, but in this graph that the user made, it does mention just the 4 seasons, and we do have a mention of summer and a couple of mentions of autumn. Yeah.
And I think what'll be interesting as well is people that live in different parts of the globe.
Exactly. Southern hemisphere people. Yeah. How do you feel about, do you recontextualize it? Because obviously we still have the 4 seasons, but, very flipped around. I've always felt it's so strange to think of Christmas at summertime. It's so strange.
Summer, yeah, exactly. Like, would you listen to 1989? Would you, because it's sunny, and would you want to listen to
But I guess you've just always had.
Are you listening to Evermore?
Yeah, you've just always had a different, experience with Christmas, because it must be weird to be like, it's really sunny, you're on the beach, and you're listening to a song that's like chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Let it snow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, but no, we actually had a comment from an Australian listener a few episodes ago, or a couple last episode or something like that. So maybe if they're still around, if you're listening, let us know. Does your, mood and feeling about these albums as seasons, or just in general, how does that change for you? Because that's really, really interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. Moving on to Speak Now. Oh, I don't know. Speak Now is a hard one for me, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot going on in that album. A lot going on. And obviously there's a lot of different mentions to different parts of the year, which can kind of influence you. The 2 releases of Speak Now have been at very, very different points of the year. At this point, in the end, I placed Speak Now in winter.
Same here. I placed it
that's interesting.
Winter into spring, I wrote.
Me too.
Because
late winter I put,
Yeah, I feel like it's not like the cold depths of winter.
No.
It's not like a Christmassy time of winter. It's almost
after.
Yeah, it's after. Like I think the problem is back to December. I think back to December.
I think we're influenced
does
by that. Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it's a big
it really
one,
does influence you and pull you into that, because nowhere in the photo shoot or its release.
No, it's not like winter vibes. No,
but then I feel like it's quite all year roundy. I feel like because the vibe of the album is just isn't one set sound. And does just feel like, I don't know, I just don't feel like it really fits anywhere. Like there's never really been a period of the year, because I have found that during certain periods of the year, I do go back to certain albums more.
Yeah, definitely.
But Speak Now is one that is never really like it's autumn now, or it's winter now, I better listen to Speak Now.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is the vibe. Yeah.
I get that, yeah.
I'm not sure. Whereas for me, start of the year now, like this start of the year, Fearless, like I did just consume, and I haven't really touched it since.
Right. Okay. It became like
it feels now
a springy album for you now. Yeah.
A spring album. Whereas Speak Now, I don't know. And obviously, it's Taylor's version releases like during summer.
Yeah, very early
everyone
summer.
At the time really wanting it. Yeah. And I remember everyone at the time wanting it to be a winter album, and her release it during winter.
But it makes sense, because we have like Better Than Revenge and Last Kiss, which are both kind of like big references to summer, which that the story starts when it was summer. I guess it is a bit of a difficult one. Speak Now, as you said, I think because of the different the amount of topics that are being spoken about and
covered, exactly,
themes going on. We've spoken about this before. Like Speak Now is the beginning of more of a diverse sound. So yeah, this one was a difficult one for me, but if you guys have more of a concrete opinion, like a very a firm stance on where Speak Now should be placed, let us know, because this one was probably one of the most difficult for me as well.
So the next album is obviously Red, and I think Red, out of all of them, is probably one of the easiest to kind of classify, because I think it's gone on to become, well, what did you put down before I ruined it?
Can you imagine? I put down spring. No, I put down autumn.
Yeah, exactly.
Autumn.
I think it's a summer album. Yes, autumn, obviously.
Definitely.
Red is the autumnal album.
It is.
But I think what is really interesting about Red is, even though I totally see it as an autumn album, that's the time that I listened to it. Upon its initial release, it was never really branded as an autumnal album. Like, obviously its release wasn't really around autumn. Well, technically, but that wasn't the intention. That was just how Taylor albums were always released. So technically it was originally released around autumn, but wasn't marketed in that way. Its photo shoot has a lot of red and orange.
But it's more summery in a way, the original photo shoot.
But it is more summery.
The original, yeah.
Exactly. It's like there is colours of autumn in that original photo shoot, but not really the vibe. The music videos themselves, like We're Never Ever Getting Back Together, Everything's Changed, I Knew You Were Trouble, 22. is quite
very diverse.
They're quite summery and
yeah,
and especially 22, for example. That is just like a summer. Like I'm just going to be 22 and go crazy kind of vibe.
That's true, actually.
But yeah, and even some of the other songs. But then, as you said, over time it's become. I think actually it tracked along because All Too Well obviously is like autumn.
Yeah.
Like that song is just so autumnal, even that original version.
Oh,
and I
definitely.
think what happened was All Too Well has always been like a fan favourite, but over time it just started to grow. And I think it really started to grow during the rep era. And that's where Taylor then started to play it more. And that was when it became like All Too Well just grew and grew. And then it got a bit of a limelight in Lover, which we have mentioned a couple of times actually, how Red and Lover are weirdly linked, and how during the Lover era, Taylor like referenced Red so much. Obviously in the song Daylight, and in performances was literally performing Red songs at stuff where even when she'd only perform like 3 songs, one of them would be a Red song, like Holy Ground, All Too Well, Red. But I think what's interesting is that on All Too Well's upward spiral in terms of becoming this massive song was that the autumnal element of Red also grew, and then it became totally linked with autumn. And I think that over time, as All Too Well grew, so did Red's autumnal association, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And by the time the re-recording came about, it was already established very, very firmly as the autumn album in Taylor's discography. I think also...
And then that's how it was marketed.
Yeah, exactly. Red also, obviously... the colours in autumn so bright, just before we lose them all, it does have other mentions, but I definitely think All Too Well is a big influence on how it became.
That's the thing.
Yeah, became more of an autumn staple, definitely. And the story it tells as well is it leads us into autumn, and how All Too Well kind of pulled that towards the beginning of winter as well, which was very interesting back.
Exactly. Yes. Because the 10-minute version actually kind of extended its seasonal references. But you are right, songs like Red, State of Grace, Treacherous, All Too Well, Holy Ground.
They all do sound very autumnal.
Yeah,
I was reminiscing over coffee. You know what I mean? Like, it's just very the autumn of it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like in a cafe on a Wednesday. Like it does feel quite so it is, but it's weird that it wasn't in a weird, even though it was, but it kind of wasn't. It didn't have.
It wasn't so established.
Autumnal, exactly. And maybe in other people's opinion, it was. Has been, but personally, for me, I felt like
it's grown over time.
I don't know. It's definitely grown, but I could never see it as any other album.
No
for
way.
Me. Like the release time of it was so perfect. Like when Taylor released the Taylor's version,
Perfect.
I remember walking down. I've even got a little video on my little Taylor merch account that I did of me walking down to get the CD, and I literally had to trek through piles of autumn leaves to like get the CD, and I even took a little picture of it in them. And then Taylor did the Starbucks collab and things like that. So she really enhanced the autumnal elements, and then
she lent into it.
Short film,
that
All Too Well short film could be more autumnal if you tried. So it definitely became like a key factor of that release. And I think when you hear, like the other day, I was just shuffling through Taylor music, and All Too Well 10 came up, which is like my favourite song. But when it came on, I hadn't listened to it in a couple of weeks, and I just kind of it just kind of took me back to 2021 autumn, like that, just like like that, the 10-minute version of it. I was like, wow, I was like, this song is just autumn 2021 for me. Like it couldn't sound more autumnal if it tried. But I'm rambling now, but Red, autumn, there's no doubt, is there really?
No, not at all. Although funnily enough, Red is the only album which mentions or has a mention to every single season. It has a mention to spring, summer, autumn and winter in the album, which is very interesting. Next up, we have 1989. Now, for me, 1989 was a little bit difficult because I was being influenced by the release and re-release date, because obviously it's the same exact day, which is, we've mentioned this in one of our previous episodes talking about 1989, Taylor's version, and I'm sure we'll mention it again as we move towards 1989. It's such an iconic thing to do, to kind of like mark that day as this is the day of 1989. However, in my head, 1989, as you described summer before and the feelings of summer, I do feel like 1989 has to be like a late summer album for me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Like,
right.
It's that freedom, isn't it, of like cutting your hair, moving to a new city, starting again, just going all out. Like, you know, that's the kind of vibe of 1989, which again is weird because its release and its initial and Taylor's version are nowhere near summer. They are very much
end of October.
In the Northern Hemisphere, is end of October, which is, you know, in autumn. But for me, 1989, sorry, it is just a summer album, and like pop, it's like, you know, style and blank space and shake it off, and you know, they have that fun summer, I'm gonna go out and you know, live my life kind of vibe.
Like I couldn't imagine
moving to a city,
ever feeling like, you know, mid December feeling like, you know what, I'm going to listen to 1989, although we probably have listened to it all year round, but
exactly,
like
it's
the
not
mood,
like
the feeling, the vibe,
exactly. And even some of the songs like This Love and stuff, I feel like it's very much like at a beach. And, you're sat by the waves.
Yeah. To be honest with you, the releases of Wildest Dreams, Taylor's version, and This Love, Taylor's version, also kind of like really cemented that summer feeling to the album anyway, because it has like the beach going on, featured in The Summer I Turned Pretty. So, you know what I mean?
Very true, actually, because the This Love like lyric video and original single cover, but wasn't then the single cover, it was the like Evermore outtake, was literally like a kind of wooden steps up to a beach. And obviously the Taylor's version cover is literally on a beach with seagulls flapping around,
very
you know,
true.
so
seagulls.
Like it's very summery, and so I think that I think Red and 1989 have always been quite distinct, and has only really been enhanced. And it's interesting that Taylor hasn't capitalized on that summer element to rebrand, to market 1989 like she did Red.
In a way, obviously this has a lot behind it, marketing wise, and every year is different. Also falling into periods of eligibility for certain awards. A lot is going on behind the scenes, but I guess in a way she is capitalizing on the idea of summer because of, you know, the photo shoot and things like that. But yeah, I guess the release date, it is an iconic release date, and it, like we said, to reclaim the date is pretty cool as well.
So next is obviously Reputation, which for me, this one actually I found quite easy to categorize, even though I didn't feel like, it's weird because I think even Taylor herself has described Reputation as like, you know, like back alleys of a city. It's dark and it's at night and it's quite secretive. And that's the kind of vibe. And because of that vibe, obviously, late nights and dark nights are in the winter.
Yeah.
And I feel like Reputation is like a winter album, but like in a city, like, you know, not like a winter where it's snowing, but just when you're in a city and it's just really cold, and
you got to wear
like really cold and really dark, and there's street lights, and you're wearing a big coat that you can go into a bar and like go like that when you get in, you know.
I agree.
That's the kind of vibe that I get from Reputation, and that's the feel of it. And so for me I've put winter, but not in the same sense that I would categorize one of the upcoming albums in winter, where I would say that it's snuggling away somewhere. It's more just like you're still going out and you're living in the city.
Kind of harsh.
It's almost, to be fair, to be quite honest, it's kind of following on from 1989 really. It's like you're in the city
definitely.
You spent this big old summer in, and now you're living the consequences of that summer. And now you're kind of like wrapping up and, you know, hiding away in the rain at night.
That's interesting. Kind of and how Taylor has described these albums lends itself very much to what you're saying, and you know how Reputation is this dark, harsh, kind of cold night in the city, and then the next one we're going to get into, she's categorized as like the morning after all of that. So that's very interesting as well.
Basically.
But no, I agree with you, definitely. I put Reputation as winter as well, but a very different winter to Speak Now, and a very different winter to, you know, the one that we know is coming up. But very different winters again, and I would say like more towards the beginning of winter, like you said. And I guess following up from that, we have Lover. So like we just said, you know, Reputation was classified more of like this dark night in the city, this very, you know, and Lover is more like, Taylor has described it as like the morning after all of that, daylight again, like this beautiful sunrise on this like very like idyllic kind of moment. And definitely for me it was easy, I guess, because of the song on Lover, right? It is summertime for me.
Cool summer.
Lover is summer. The date of its release, perfect. It is that moment in the summer for me.
Exactly, and that's how I feel. It is the summer of 2019 for me.
Definitely.
And I feel like the for me, it's like the height of summer, Lover. Like, you know how we said with 1989 it was kind of the end of summer, like, you know, and it's still hot and you're still going out, but Lover is when, like, even at 8 o'clock at night, it's the sun, you know, you've still got sunsets and it's still, you know, that's the vibe of Lover. And that was the vibe that she was definitely going for with the announcement, with all the pastels and the colours and its release, music videos, definitely vibe into that. Other than Lover, the music video.
Which is a random Christmas. Yeah,
and even, for example, like the tour, she wanted to do it in summer.
Yeah,
and,
festivals.
You know, sing the songs when the sun was setting. Yeah, and the Eras tour, she achieved that by having it at the start of the set when the sun's still setting, and that's clearly the vibe of Lover.
Definitely.
You know, songs like You Need to Calm Down and its music video, summery music video is as well. Cruel Summer, the song. For me, Lover, the song as well. Daylight. There's so many in there. Like, to be fair, most of that album really. Cornelia Street, I feel, is quite summery. Just all of it. The Man. It's just all quite upbeat and summery.
Yeah. I agree with you. I agree. Yeah.
These three, Red, 1989, Rep and Lover for me are just quite clear on where they're set. I feel like that's this is when Taylor started to really define the eras anyway. So they are more clear cut in between themselves, and therefore she was going for different imagery.
Speak Now, Fearless, they're more, not to say samey because they're not, they each have their own themes and topics and concepts, but I get what you mean. Like, we have more,
they were building off of each other rather than re-establishing.
Yeah. And now Red, 1989, Rep. It will be interesting, though, to see, for example, how Debut is, like, reimagined, and will that kind of cling on to a moment in time like Fearless did in our heads? Or will it be something different? Same for Reputation. When will the re-release be? Because it does feel like a November album in a way for me, you know, like a November. Yeah, we'll see. But going to references, because we haven't mentioned any for 1989 or Reputation, and that is because there are no actual seasonal references in 1989 or Reputation. We do have references to months, but we don't have references to spring, summer, autumn, or winter. For Lover, however, we have references to summer, autumn and winter, but predominantly because of the song Cruel Summer, which is repeated so many times. Summer is the most mentioned season in the album, and aptly so. I listened to Lover on its anniversary recently, gave it a proper listen from beginning to end, kind of getting into it again, and it just fits. It does fit.
So next is obviously Folklore, and I think for me, Folklore is an interesting one because I remember at the time it was kind of branded as like a kind of late summer album.
Yeah.
But for me, Folklore, weirdly, even though it does feel that way, it kind of feels slightly autumnal.
Okay.
Like, it feels like, it doesn't feel like it's really hard to describe because, like, summer, I don't really listen to Folklore. I listen to it in like the autumn September-y time, even though it came out in July originally, but it's normally like an autumn September where it's kind of raining and you're in the car and, you know, the summer's over and you're feeling a bit blue and a bit sad about things and, you know, a bit reflective, and you can see the end of the year in sight and it's all a bit sad and your hopes for the year haven't really kind of, you know, come to fruition, and you're getting towards the end thinking, oh gosh, that's the kind of vibe I get for Folklore.
But I get you. It is a very reflective.
Moving on.
No, it's a very reflective album, and I get what you mean by that. And I thought we were going to disagree for a minute, but then again, what you've said kind of does. I did place it in very late summer, moving into fall anyway. Like I kind of see it in July as well because of that. You know, one of them horrible summer days where the heat is sticky and it's a very different summer to Lover. It's a very different summer to 1989. They're very distinct summers. You know, 1989 is a summer day at the beach. Lover is just like this really sweet summer day where nothing is too hot and it's just a really, you know, you've got a drink in your hand, a cold drink.
Incredible.
Exactly.
Yeah, you've got a nice chill drink.
And Folklore is a really sticky night. It's, you know, where maybe it's rained and it's so humid and horrible, and yeah, that's how I feel for Folklore, and I feel that you can place that easily at the end of summer. And one lyric from Folklore that I think makes me feel that way is "Our coming of age is come and gone," which I feel like is a very end of summer kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah. In my head. Anyway.
And to fair, even the way she opens it, like, I'm doing good, I'm on some new shit.
Yeah.
like, and it is just like, I'm fine, like, you know, it's summer, that's the kind, you know, that kind of vibe, like, I'm doing new stuff, it's all right. So yeah, I do get that vibe, and it does run through, but I don't know, for me, when I personally listen to it, it is definitely later summer. But then when I do listen to it, it does take me back to like that lockdown period, and when it was actually really hot, to be fair. The weather was so lovely during that
Ironic,
2020 lockdown, or at least in the UK,
yeah.
And it does kind of take me back to that time. But what I always find really funny is the fact that Taylor was making everyone buy cardigans, like thick cardigans in like
in August.
July.
August.
In July, August. Like, what was she thinking?
The power she has, because everyone did wear, you know, and they do every year on its anniversary.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, so that's how I'd categorise folklore. But yeah, like you said, it is distinct in its category. I would never ever put it in the same summer, as you said, of 1989.
Yeah, and as for mentions, we only have summer mentions really, and also we have the song August. So, you know, so much for summer love, all of this. So, but again, I see that as a very end of summer kind of thing, more than
yeah, definitely. Like so much for summer love, as if like
it's
you come to the end of the you come to the end of the summer and it's kind of over.
You're back at school, September.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now we can move on to Evermore, which is the one that we've been kind of like hinting towards throughout all of this time.
Yes.
It is the winter/Christmas album, isn't it? It really is.
Oh yeah.
Like
last year, I didn't listen to, other than Casey Musgrave's Christmas album, A Very Casey Christmas, and I always watch her. What's it?
Christmas special,
like Amazon Prime Christmas show. Yeah,
such a good one.
The only Christmas, technically the only music I listened to around Christmas was Evermore.
Oh, it's so
because
good.
like we're of the age now where like Christmas is kind of,
it's not the same,
you're not
is
getting
it?
loads of presents as a kid. It does have an element of kind of sadness and melancholy, but also excitement. But you've like gone back home, you know, like that's the vibe of Evermore, isn't it? Of like going back home for Christmas and kind of being cold and wrapping yourself up in, you know, the coldness of it, and kind of being quite reflective and thinking about things, and you know, you're back in your old hometown where all your school friends are, and you're kind of thinking about your life, and that's the kind of vibe I get from Evermore. And I loved it last year. Like literally, I was like, I don't want to listen to bloody Mariah Carey. I want to listen to "'Tis the Damn Season." Like that's my Christmas song this year.
Yeah, honestly, like you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, that episode that we did on Evermore, and we did mention throughout, it is a secret Christmas album. It really is. It has, from the production, you know, Aaron incorporated a lot of kind of like sleigh bells in the distance and very Christmassy kind of sounds, which heightens it, and it makes you think of that time of the year. Again, its release date perfectly placed for that time, and whereas Folklore does feel like that stuffy kind of heat, Evermore does feel like that wrap me in a blanket kind of cold. Yeah, the cabin. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Definitely.
Folklore's wandering around the woods, and
finding a cabin.
It's like, bloody hell, it's cold. Get me inside.
Yeah, get into that cabin. Definitely. No, I agree. It has to be right. And many of the songs lend themselves well, especially I think "'Tis the Damn Season" is just the cherry on top of
"'Tis the Damn"
secret Christmas song.
Yeah, exactly. "'Tis the Damn Season," and even some of the later songs like the song "Evermore."
Oh yes. Yeah.
"Cowboy Like Me," things like that really do lend themselves. And "Champagne Problems," the kind of slightly slower, like more floaty kind of, if that's the way to describe the songs definitely fit that season so well. Like, yeah, Evermore sums up. It is, for me, is just very much a December. Like, Evermore is December for me in terms of the winter. I'd say that Reputation is November.
Agreed. Speak
Evermore
Now
is December, and
January?
Speak Now would be like Jan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool that we see it like that. Yeah. As for references, it does. Evermore does have references to like spring, autumn, winter. It also has, you know, I've been down since July, so we do have kind of a summer reference in there, but definitely I just think the production and everything lends itself perfectly. I can't wait to listen to Evermore in its season again, because it's good.
To be fair, every time, like, I listen to Evermore quite a lot, but I don't know why, but every time we ever mention it, it gets me so excited to listen to it again.
Oh, and I'm an Evermore stan, so
yeah, exactly. yeah. But it's like that album, there's just always so much to unpack. Like
it's a very
every
good
time
album.
I listen, there's always something more that I unpack.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh wow. Or like like I said, when I do go home around Christmas, like last year, I just was like, God, this album is just, I was like, wow. I was like, and that's why I just didn't really want to listen to,
anything else.
other Christmas songs. So I was like, this is fitting the vibe for me. Like, this is fitting the vibe of what it's like to be older and, round the December period, where you're kind of slightly trying to avoid Christmas because you're like, oh my God, that signifies the end of a year and the start of another one, and I don't want another year. I'm old enough.
God. No, I get you. I agree. Yeah, it is such a good album. I could talk about Evermore all day, but I agree. Yeah.
And finally, the obviously last and most recent Taylor Swift album in her discography is Midnights. And Midnights for me, even though I mentioned that Fearless was quite hard, I think I could anchor it a bit more with the Taylor's version release.
Right.
But for Midnights, this was the one that I really, really struggled with. I don't think it, for me, really has a season that I can tie it to. I think that sonically it doesn't really feel like any season because it is very pop, but not in the way of like a bright, hopeful pop. It is quite a reflective, melancholy pop.
Yeah.
And obviously the theme of it is like midnights, obviously, and and therefore the things I associate with that is like darkness and kind of self-reflection and cold. And therefore for me, that would be like, oh, that would mean winter, cold, dark nights. But midnights isn't
feel
winter.
like that. No. It's
so
a very difficult one to pin down.
I literally didn't really write anything.
No, I haven't classified it either. It's kind of like an all year round thing, I guess. Maybe we haven't had it for long enough, so we haven't kind of, it's like Red, like you said with Red, obviously maybe in time it will move towards a certain season in our lives. Obviously now we have just had the anniversary of when Midnights was announced. Crazy to think that was a year ago.
Well, it makes you feel sick.
Yeah,
nuts.
and then soon it will be the anniversary of when it was released, which was a very typical Taylor release date kind of thing in autumn. So, but I don't know. It feels like a bit of everything, which I guess it is because it is an exploration of all of these midnights throughout her whole life. It's her looking back at her discography and having a conversation with all of her past selves. Yeah,
exactly.
So difficult one.
I feel like certain songs like Sweet Nothing, for example, for me, like tie in with the folklore kind of sound, like that kind of late summery feel, like with the beach pebble and things like that. But then Bejeweled is like the 1989.
Oh, definitely. More like a
moving
summery.
to a new city, kind of sound. And then you've got some of the more like labyrinth sounds that are slightly more like Evermore or
and then we have like Maroon,
which ties to Red. Exactly, and then
Snow on the Beach.
Elements of like the
is that like a January song? I don't know. Yeah,
I don't even know when it does or doesn't snow on beaches. And then even like Vigilante Shit or Question kind of ties more into the reputation winter of like November of like a city. So I just feel like because like you said, it does reference
so many different things.
The seasons are also the same and referencing multiple. Yeah, Midnights I literally didn't classify. I cheated as ever, and I'm glad that you did as well, because these things where it's like whenever we do these and it's like you've got to pick 3 for each one, I'm like, yes, I've picked 5. I know I shouldn't. Or it's like you have to pick. Yeah, it's like you have to pick 1 from each album. Like, so I decided to pick a single that isn't on an album.
Yeah.
I always have to break or bend the rules slightly. I'll be like, so this song wasn't on the Reputation album, but was released during that era. But no, so yeah, I couldn't really classify Midnights, but I think that's almost quite nice, and therefore it does mean that it does its job quite well, I guess.
Yeah, it's very aseasonal. It's very like it's nowhere, but it's everywhere. And maybe like I said, in time, maybe we will have like more feelings or more memories established to one certain point of the year. Maybe as the anniversary approaches and we listen to it again in that time of the year, although then again we'll be very much consumed by 1989 by that point as well. But it's interesting. The only reference to a specific season in Midnights is summer. Summer went away, still the yearning stays. So, which is a very similar lyric to Our Coming of Age has come and gone. a very summary, end of summary lyric. But then, like you said, there's so many songs that talk about such a variety of things that I wouldn't want to just classify it into one little box. So,
Here.
maybe in time, maybe with different memories as we go along with it, as we have, sat with many of the other albums for many, many years, or at least in the case of Evermore and Folklore, coming up to 3 years now. So, yeah, we shall see. But you let us know what your guys' thoughts are. Like, how would you classify Midnights? Would it be a difficult one for you? Or would you be like, no, Midnights is summer, or Midnights is spring? I don't know. Give us your reasonings for that, because that would be interesting to see. But yeah, I think that's our classification for sure. And it's interesting how we can go over Midnights again. We haven't really placed in any box. Spring we only have 1, summer we have 3, autumn we have 2, and in winter we also have another 3. So very summer winter.
I think what's interesting as well is that, and also that our guesses were all very, like, literally identical.
Yeah.
Like, either very similar or identical. Like, we didn't go, neither of us...
Yeah, we didn't have any, like, crazy differences.
No,
I'm not sure if that
this
means...
is summer and they're like winter.
I'm not sure if that means that maybe there is a general consensus in the Taylor Swift fandom and we've just been influenced by that. Or does it mean that these albums do have very particular vibes, which is another thing that we can see other people's opinions and kind of compare with them. But yeah, that is very interesting, yeah.
So yeah, please let us know, because I would be intrigued if that is just, we just share a similar opinion, or that is a very unanimous opinion across all fans that that's the album, that's this season, that's this album, that's this season. So yeah, please do let us know what out of the 10 albums, which seasons you would associate, and therefore if they differ, are the same. It would be interesting to know, if we are the odd ones out or everyone else picks the same.
And with that, we've come to the end of this episode. Bit more of a fun, creative one, like some of our very first episodes. Again, thank you very much for sticking with us, or thank you for joining us if this is your very first episode, and we hope you like it and you'd like to stay along for our journey and what's to come. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a like over on YouTube, subscribe there as well. And if not, you can always rate us on Spotify or Apple Music. We always like to check out again what you guys have to say, your comments and opinions about everything. So do let us know. And finally, if you want to keep up with us and know when new episodes are coming out, you can follow us on Instagram. Our handle is @SwiftlySpokenPodcast.